Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Ryan here, as always. Just before we get into the topic of the day, I'd just like to give you a friendly reminder that all of my educational content up to this date is free, and all of it will stay free or at least very affordable for the foreseeable future. And if the work that I put into making this content for you is something that you think is worth anything, then you can do me a favor and hit the like button down below. And if you're interested in supporting me in other ways, then I will have a comment just in the a pinned comment in the comment section, which will give you some more details about other ways you can support me. Anyways, that's the only commercial for the day for me. So what I'm going to be doing today is yesterday I did kind of a shorter stream where I talked about making a list of things which I want to refactor or change or add to my profiler application. Now, before I actually start making those changes, I want to get the application running, and I just want to make sure that it's got a solid baseline where it's working, because the difficulty is, in my mind, if I make some huge changes to the application and I don't have that baseline to kind of revert to, I just think that could be kind of a bad idea. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because if I implement a new feature and I just do it properly, then it should work, but I just think it's safe to have that kind of baseline. Now, I'll also be kind of continuing on what I did yesterday, so if there's anything that kind of jumps out at me that's something that I would like to change, then I'm going to be taking note of that. So without further ado, let's just kind of jump into the code. Also, actually no, I won't make that announcement just yet, but yeah, we'll. I've got some announcements for a more regular stream schedule and stuff like that, but I need to sort of solidify it a little bit better. Anyways, without further ado, let's just jump in here. So I'd like to remind everyone that unfortunately I'm still only working with one monitor at the moment. And so I'm going to be a little bit slower on comments and stuff like that, just because I really get tunnel vision, which is part of what helps me focus. And I forgot what B was. What was B? It's not going to be as easy for me to notice the comments. I'm not going to be noticing them on the fly, so I apologize about that, but I will be fixing that soon. And yeah, let's just see if we've got anyone. Oh wow, we've already got a couple people. It's funny, you can tell immediately when I'm streaming in the morning, because like generally speaking, there's still people in India who are able to watch this. So thank you to my viewers at probably around, it's probably about 12:30 at night in India. So if you are watching this late, then thank you. So let's dive in here. So what I've done is I've pulled up an emulator, just a regular old Android emulator from the Android Studio. So I just wanted to make a quick note about Genymotion versus the other emulators. Just one moment. What I do is, as I go on random tangents, I note down the time, and that's so that I don't have to watch the entire video at length later on. So you'll just have to bear with me. So just one really quick reflection. I unfortunately, so I'm not going to be really bad-mouthing Genymotion. Genymotion has quite obviously been a really good choice for a number of years, and the general consensus is that unfortunately the Android Studio emulator, depending on what kind of device you're running Android Studio on, so whether you've got an Intel processor or an AMD processor or whatever, there's just different little things that made the Genymotion emulator more desirable. Although it does come with a price tag, and I'm not shitting. They're entitled to make money on their product, and I think it's ultimately a good product. However, now that I've upgraded my computer and it has an Intel processor, it's got like an Intel 70. I think it's a, can't remember if it's i5 or i7 7600, but it's one of the new KB Lake processors and all that crap. Anyways, longer story shorter, I actually kind of now regret that I purchased Genymotion because this thing is working better and faster than Genymotion is for me on this new computer. And I'm not saying don't buy Genymotion because I still think it's a good product, but I do actually regret buying it like 2 months ago, and then now that I've just upgraded my computer, it can actually use the Android emulator fine. But whatever, that's not super important. I just wanted to um, just briefly mention that. Hey, what's up, Vikas? I am doing very well. Thanks for stopping by again. I'm trying to streamline my educational content, but today it's basically just going to be me sharing the actual experience of what I would normally do working on one of my apps. But thanks for stopping by, man. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to be as on top of the components because I'm working with one monitor, but I'll still keep checking. So the first thing I'm going to do now that I've babbled about emulators is I'm just going to run this project, and I got it building last night, as you can see down here, Gradle build finished. And what I would like to do now is just see if it is. Let me just make sure I'm not in Make sure I'm not in full screen mode. I'm just going to see if it runs on this emulator. Now, I normally prefer to use the API 23 emulator, but just with my StreamCap software going and Android Studio and all that stuff, I thought I'd just use the API 21 emulator. Hopefully that's showing up okay for on the stream. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay. And this will take a little while, could be lagging even. Okay, so it loaded, that's cool. It logged me into Derp's account. Let's just, so what I'm gonna do now, I don't really know if there is a technical term for this. I think this probably isn't it, but I think I'm kind of going to do an end-to-end test. So basically I'm just going to go through all features of the application, and if I get any crashes, then I'm going to be taking note of where those are, and then I'll either just continue testing or I might try and fix the crash if it's a quick one. And one other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to create another file within the root of this project, and this file will have interest to you. This file is, you're not going to let me create a file? There we go, okay. This file is going to be called errorlog.txt. So from here on, yes, I would like to add that to Git. So from here on, whenever I get an error of almost any kind, unless it's like a really quick, stupid one, if it's a complex error, I'll put it like that, I'm going to note the, whatever relevant stack trace information I get, if I get any, a quick description of the error, and also once I solve the error, a quick solution. And this is called making an error log, and to me it's just another step to just being a better coder, is just tracking your errors so that you don't make them over and over again, or that you have a resource that you can learn from your errors with. Again, really not an expert, but I care about making good code, writing good code. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, I don't recall if there is an actual image loaded onto this emulator. I don't think there is, so I don't think I'll be able to select a profile pic, but what I can do is click on the face icon, and yeah, interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and consider that an error. Now, why would I consider this an error when it's an emulator and it just doesn't have, obviously it just doesn't have data. Oh, am I running the mock version? That's the first. Oh, okay. I'm running the mock version. Let me shut this down. That's an issue. Let me fix it and then I'll explain what I did. Actually, I'll explain it first this time. So in the project, and I'm going to be overhauling this a lot because I have some better, more streamlined approaches, but just in brief, you'll notice that in the project there is a mock source set and a prod source set, and if you open up build.gradle, which is Control-Shift-N to open a file, and you go to the app level build Gradle file, what you'll notice is that there are two product flavors. One of the product flavors is mock and one of them is prod. I don't actually think, I'm not sure if application ID suffix is the correct thing. Do note that this stuff needs to get fixed. I've changed my approach about this stuff. I'm just showing you that there is a mock and a production build flavor, but the way that I set this stuff up, I need to go over it again because it's not optimal. And I will be doing a video eventually, a dedicated tutorial on adding things like build flavors and or product flavors and build variants and all that, all the random new words that I love learning and remembering, because the joke is that I actually don't remember them, but whatever. Anyways, so I've switched, let's switch to the production variant. And we'll see if that runs. So the thing, what I was running before is I was basically running the application but with fake data. Now, there's times when you want to be doing that. That is deliberate, but in this particular case, I want to be running the production part of the application. And you know what? I just realized that this thing isn't set up with Firebase properly. So what I'm going to have to do is, unfortunately, put everyone in webcam mode for a little while, and I'm going to have to fix that really quickly. So I'm going to make a note of that. All right, 1 second. Okay, so I have to apologize to everyone. One of the things that I totally forgot to do is add this project. So here's a funny thing that happened. The other day, I got a message from GitHub, a notification, and someone had very kindly and appreciatively pointed out that I had uploaded my GitHub API. Let's see, strings.xml. Is that what it is? Control-Shift-N, strings.xml. Is it still in here? It looks like I deleted it. What I had done is I had actually uploaded my API secret and client key or something like that from Firebase. So basically, during the time that that project was present, anyone could have punched that into their app and then have been talking to my project, which is kind of dumb and kind of a funny mistake. So anyways, I can't actually remember where I put that, but what I'm going to do, just give me a couple minutes to get that sort of sorted out, and just give me like 2 minutes and then we'll be back to coding. I do apologize about that, but I kind of need to do this before we can even progress with the application, so just bear with me. All right. I'm going to try and do this quickly as well. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to try and entertain you with random bullshit. Let's see here. I would share this stuff. It's just, it's sensitive information that I don't want to share. I was thinking about doing a video showing you how to set up a Firebase project, but to be honest, it's really quite straightforward. Like, I don't even think it's worth my time to do that. All right, I need my package name. I'm almost kind of doing that right now. Let's open up the Android manifest and com.wiseass.profiler. I bet there's a couple people in the stream just being like, hey, you forgot to turn it off a webcam mode. Which this time, and probably this time only, it's deliberate. Okay, again, I don't think this will take super long. I do now need to... Okay, that's going to be interesting. Um, sorry, 1 second. I need to... Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, I've added the project. I'm just trying to figure this out because I need to configure it to work with multiple uh, product flavors. You know what I'm gonna do? I could dick around with this. Well, let me just give me a few more minutes. I don't want to waste anyone's time here. And to be honest, actually, after just saying how simple it is to set up your profiler, or sorry, your Firebase application, it actually is more complicated because I have multiple uh, build variants. What I'm gonna do, I'm not actually gonna do this right now. Let me log out, and we're gonna figure out something else to do because there is plenty of shit I can do. Let's go back to webcam mode. Basically, what I was, um, I really should have. That was a mistake on my part. I should have set that up beforehand. However, there's lots of stuff we can work on in this application. Um, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to reload the mock variant and run that and see if there's any crashes with it. Because at the very least, I can kind of test a lot of the app that way. And we won't actually connect to our remote. We won't actually talk to Firebase this time, which isn't super important. That's the whole point of doing all this testing stuff is basically so that you can run the app without having to actually run the app. You can test different parts of the application without actually having to. So, anyways, yeah. Someone dropped by. Hello, Ryan from Russia. Uh, thank you. Thank you for that kind comment, comrade, tovarish. It's interesting. Most of my viewers are either Eastern European / Russian or they're Asian. I guess Russia is technically part of Asia, but that is definitely the majority of my viewers. Um, okay, so let's look at this application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically just going to try and break it. So I'm going to use the various, click on all the widgets and do all the things, and we'll see how far we can get because I'm not actually talking to a real database. But if there's any obvious crashes, then I can at least fix those. The thing. What? I don't know, that's just nonsense. Okay. And, yep, that's working more or less. I'm gonna try logging out. I don't actually know how this works since I'm running the mock version, but we'll see. Okay, I'm not sure if that's actually going to work, but that's all right. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This certainly needs to get cleaned up. This looks ugly in here. Okay, so I'm not sure how far I'm going to be able to get, unfortunately, but that's okay. Well, the app is basically running, and that's the main thing that I wanted to figure out now. And what I'll do now is I'm going to try and figure out some... Let's get started on making some changes. So first things first, I'm actually going to just close that down and hit the stop button, because when the app is still running with the emulator, it does kind of slow the computer down quite a bit. So yeah. Anyways, let's move on a little bit. Okay. I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to run some unit tests. I can talk a little bit about what those are because it'll take a minute to run them. And that's my next step. So why I'm running these tests is I want to see if any of them fail, if anything is broken since last time I ran them. If I recall correctly, they were all running properly. I'm not actually going to run the tests for photo detail. No, wait. Yeah, correct. I'm not going to run the tests for photo detail presenter. No, actually I'll run them all, but these two components of the app, these two features, photo detail and photo gallery, are basically due to they're heading for the chopping block. And the reason for it is I'd actually like to just use, I believe, the camera application to let the user pick a profile. Or there's some third-party app I can use to do that. And when there's an easy third-party solution and it ends up being more work to do your own thing, like making your own photo picker and photo gallery, then it's kind of silly not to just strip that out and let your app worry about what it is originally supposed to do. So yeah. Anyways, let's go over here. And so the way that so here's a couple things. If you're new to Mockito and unit testing, all that stuff, you might be wondering a little bit. Some of this stuff might be new to you. This repository is open source, and I'll have relevant links down below so you'll be able to find it. I think I have the link to the repository right in the description box. And so the purpose with these tests is to kind of test the behavior of the application, just kind of just make sure it kind of behaves how it's supposed to. Now, I'm not going to give you a long explanation of how that works. This is going to be pretty practical stuff here. So the first thing is, once you do get your test set up, and I do have content explaining how to do this, so you're going to have to if you're wondering, you're going to have to do a bit of your own legwork here. Look through my channel. I have videos on unit testing. So there's kind of two things you can do. You can run these tests individually by hitting this icon here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that on this one test. And let's talk briefly about what these tests actually say. Okay, so right off the bat, it failed. That's important. But before I get to that, I'm basically testing different behavior or use cases of the application. So you'll notice that this thing says when get user fails. It's a test. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up profile. You'll notice all of these classes are called something something presenter test. I'm going to open up something something presenter, which is in this case profile detail presenter, if I can spell properly. And we're going to look at that method. So this test is supposed to tell me what happens when getting a user fails. It's failing. So I'm going to go to the method that would do that, which is, I believe, get active user. Unfortunately, I'm going to be kind of relearning this as I go as well, so we're both kind of starting from a blank slate to a degree. And so this would be the method. It's testing get user, and it's failing. So why is it failing? Before I even worry about that one, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the entire test suite, which is every test in this class. Actually, I think the entire test suite would be every test in the app, but let me just run. I'm going to hit this run icon, and it's going to run all of the tests within this particular class. It looks like they're all failing, so what I'm starting to suspect is that these tests are not properly formed anymore or something of that nature. So I'm just gonna, just for my own peace of mind, I'm gonna try and fix one of these right now because I feel like it. I'll also just check if there's anyone watching or any questions rather. None yet. So I'm just gonna try and see why one of these tests is working, because I think this will be useful to you as well, because this will be the actual process. I'm gonna figure out why this test is working, and this is all live shit. Okay, so let's run the test and let's see what it's telling me. I'm just going to make a note that we're talking about testing. For those of you wondering if my videos ever get more coherent, basically what I'm doing with these random sort of unscripted streams is I'm just taking you along with my process. I'm not really trying to teach anything specific, but if you check out my channel, I do have plenty of content where I am just teaching stuff. So if you're kind of wondering what the point of this is, it's just to share my knowledge with you pretty much and get feedback on it. Okay, so I've run the test and it's probably difficult to see, so I'm going to zoom in. And so it just says null pointer exception, profile detail presenter, get active user. So now that I'm reading that, I'm wondering right off the bat, did I mock something that wasn't mocked before? Nope. Our database source is still a fake. What is it saying is null again? I should have paid closer attention. So at profile detail presenter, at line 4, it's calling... Okay, this is a funny... I've run into this before. So it's telling me that the scheduler is null, I believe. Or did I misread that? Line 74, was it? Oops, that'll be in the run. Line 74. So if it was being truthful, it would be... Actually, I think... Here's the thing. It's saying I'm calling this method and auth is null. So obviously I'm not setting up auth properly. And now that I look at it... Okay, so here's what happened. Yesterday, before I made some changes, this didn't actually say mock, I don't think. It probably would have said auth source equals auth injection dot provide auth source or something like that. But yesterday I decided that I'm not actually going to be using fakes quite so much. I'm going to be leveraging mocks quite a bit more. If you're wondering what the difference between a fake and a mock is in the context of unit testing, those are unit testing terms. What I would suggest to you is watch the video, the previous video in this playlist, and there is a note down in the description box where there's like a timestamp where I explain the difference. In this case, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to note that my tests are broken because I haven't properly configured my mocks. So that's important to note. Let's hop over to another one. Okay, that's not a test. Here we go. So let's look at this test. Now I don't think this one's going to fail because as you'll notice, I haven't mocked out either the auth source or the database source, which is my goal eventually, but I was taking a different approach before. Once again, I'm going to run these tests and see what happens. All right, so in this case, all the tests pass. So that's a really good thing for me to see. And the reason why it's a good thing for me to see is when I ran this previous test suite and all of the tests failed, I'm either confronted with the reality that I just wrote a whole bunch of bad tests, or, as what turned out to be the case, was that I just haven't configured them properly. And there's a difference. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm pretty confident that once I actually set this mock-up, which I might get to doing right now, I might not. Once that's actually set up, I'm pretty sure most of these tests are going to run again. So I think really just the takeaway here is to just notice that there's information that these tests are going to give me. When they're breaking and when they're failing, that's almost always... When you kind of get... Let me just go into a quick... we'll go into quick webcam mode for a second. Here's a quick note on unit testing and test-driven development and that kind of stuff. And again, I'm just going to take a note of it. So I've talked about this before at length, and I'll just keep this brief at the moment, but there's always the question, do I need to unit test? Is there any point in writing unit tests? Is it worth the time investment? Because I could spend that time writing unit tests, or I could spend that time adding features or whatever. Should I write unit tests? What kind of information do unit tests give me? That kind of thing. I've already talked about this at length in a previous video. You can go check that out. But just the main thing that I've learned is that testing lets you do three things really importantly. So number one, you catch errors sooner. Your tests have to pass. I think if you're doing it properly, your tests have to pass before you even run the app. So that's the first thing. So it's like and the thing is it's faster to run unit tests on the Java virtual machine than it is to load up a device, to build your app, to load it onto the device, and to play around with it and discover an error that way. If you can discover any of those errors in your unit tests, on the JVM, because let me just switch back to code for a minute here. What is this actually doing? Like when I hit one of these run methods, it's not actually running, it's not deploying the app, as you can see. It's not saying Gradle build, it's not asking me for a device to deploy to. It's actually just running this test on the Java virtual machine. And that is why you need to like mock out services and you need to mock out the view. Like normally this would be a fragment, but since I don't actually want to be dealing with the fragment and all of its dependencies and all that crap, I make a fake one. Now again, when I say fake, I'm not talking about a fake in the context of unit testing. That is a technical term, and as I will probably complain about every time I have to mention it, using the word mock and fake to define things I think is a silly idea, but whatever. Because in order to explain what a mock is, I need to use the word fake. This will be the second video in a row that I've complained about that, so I apologize. I'm gonna try not to because I don't like complaining a whole bunch, but yeah, totally tangented there. Anyways, so just to summarize, and then I'll move on. Unit tests help me catch errors sooner. That's the first thing. Let's go back to full screen for a minute here. Unit tests help me catch errors sooner. They help me decide the structure of the application. They actually help me, they help to inform the structure and the implementation of the class that I'm writing the tests for. So that's a big bunch of words. Let me explain what that actually is. So what I actually mean by that is this test here is, in a sense, a short form version of a use case, a particular like flow. So for example, this test, I don't actually remember if I wrote this test before I wrote the actual method itself. So for example, if I wrote the test before I wrote this method here, generally speaking, I will, if I'm following TDD, write this kind of test, already decide what this particular use case should result in, and take note of what methods need to be called and all that kind of stuff. I make that decision in the test, which I've written before I write the actual method. This method I would consider to be the actual implementation. That's a technical word. When I think implementation, I think actual hard runnable code like this. And when I think of like more high level stuff, more abstract stuff, I think of this test, which it is runnable code, but it's almost pseudo code in a way because we're not actually working with stuff. I'm getting sidetracked again. But the important thing to note here is that this test will run if this code does what it's supposed to do. If this code doesn't, like let's say for example, so I'm writing my test, I'm saying when get user fails, when the auth service fails to get a user, here is what you do. I'm going to write that actually. When we aren't able to get a user from auth service, show an error message. Now I've got this comment which describes it at a very high level, and then I've got the test which basically describes, I'm basically saying here, this method makeToast needs to be called on the view. It just needs to be. Otherwise the test isn't going to pass. And then at the very implementation level, the lower level, I actually have to write the method. So that's basically it. Am I still in full screen mode? No, I switched out, so that's great. I'm just going to check for questions really quickly. And it looks like we have another possibly Eastern European. I was practicing how to say hello in Russian the other day. Привет, or Привет. Hopefully I got that correct. Anyways, so that's basically, yeah, that's some thoughts on unit testing and stuff like that, and what the actual purpose behind test-driven development is. So that's okay. So I'm going to add this to my, actually I think it's already on my to-do list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-Shift-N, which is file lookup, and I'm going to say refactoring checklist, refactoring to-do list. So I'm just going to make sure that I've written down to fix those unit tests. This is like my little my little to-do thing. So I'm going to actually remake this entry. I'm going to say make tests work with mocks instead of fakes. And if you're wondering what I'm saying there, you're just going to have to watch the previous episode because I talk about it at length. Make tests work with mocks instead of fakes. Okay. So that's good. So I've established that most of my tests are probably going to still pass. Let me run a couple more test suites, but we'll see. Okay, yeah, that's all. Those are all passing. That's good. Man, it's when you write a lot of unit tests and you see that, like, when you're just watching the tests run and you're seeing like the bar fill up with green. Oh, there we go. So here's some more broken ones. Okay, that's okay. I'm not actually gonna fix these right now, but I just wanted to know. Oh, so these ones are again probably failing because I mocked the auth source. The thing is, when you make a mock object, you actually have to say what the mock does. Like if there's any point where the presenter says to the mock, get me some data or something of that nature, you have to predefine that behavior by saying something along the lines of mockito dot when some method dot then return blah blah blah. You have to do then return clauses, but again, I'm not going to do that right now. Okay. What? Yeah, we can go ahead and close those out. Okay. So I'm not sure. So I'm just going to take a moment. If for the viewers that are watching right now, if you guys have any general questions, let me know. Let's see. We're getting on to about 40 minutes. I don't think I'm going to be streaming for a whole lot longer, so I'll open this up to just general questions. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get as much done on camera today because I goofed and didn't set up Firebase properly, and that's not something that I can do on camera. It's not something I really want to do on camera or waste your time with. So I'm not actually going to be getting to debug this app a huge amount, but I'm going to keep messing around for a little while, and if you do have any general questions, then I will be happy to take those at this point. So in the meantime, let's figure out something to do here. There's a lot of stuff I could do. So do I have implement? Yeah, I've got implement dagger 2. I think what I will do, just because I feel like it, is I am going to start fixing my unit tests. That'll be a practical thing that I can get done on camera. I know I just said I wasn't going to do it, but I can't actually think of a better thing to do. And I already have like 15 things to fix in this application, so the work's only going to get done when I start doing it. So, yeah. So, first things first, let's open up our tests. I'm not going to delete my fakes right away. And when I say fake, I mean very specifically, in this case, let's go to mock actually. You'll notice that in my mock source set, I've got this thing called fake auth service, and I've got this thing called fake database. I'm not going to delete these because they might still be useful later on, but instead what I'm going to try and do is in my test classes, which are all here, and I'm not going to worry about refactoring photo detail and photo gallery. In all of these classes, instead of like saying auth source.auth injection, instead of creating a fake, I'm just going to mock everything. So instead of talking about that, let's just go ahead and start doing it. So the way that we do that is I just hit mock. So I'm going to mock my sources. Now, if you're wondering what these things are, what is auth source and what is database source, those are basically just classes. Again, like go check out the open source repository. This code is openly available, and take the time to familiarize yourself if you're interested in it. But just in brief, auth source is a service class that's responsible for creating, it manages users, it creates users, it deletes them, it updates them, all that stuff. And database source manages like user data. So the user's profile picture and their interests and bio and things of that nature. Again, go check out the class if you want to know what it does more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these entries. And that shouldn't cause any issues. I've added the mock annotation, and I'm still calling Mockito annotations.init mocks, so I shouldn't actually get any errors, and this setup method should continue to work fine. Now, before I proceed, I'm just going to check and see if there's any questions. All right. And it looks like we do have a question. So, is it good practice to use libraries like Mockito or Guava in Android? And there's a follow-up question. So in your follow-up question, I don't, just to jump right, I'll answer the first question, but in the follow-up question, these libraries are meant to be used on any operating system that can really allow you to develop Android applications. So let me just switch to webcam mode. That's totally not it. So the first question is it good practice to use libraries like Mockito or Guava? And the second question was kind of, weren't they supposed to be used on PCs? So to answer your first question, or sorry, your second question first, that is not correct. You can use these libraries on anything. Now, but your first question is, of course, that is a great question. So is it good practice to use libraries like Mockito? And this is a really interesting question. So one interesting experience I had, because about a week ago I actually got the chance to sit down with some actual developers at a local company and chat with them for a little while. I didn't end up working for that company, but it was still a really great experience. Now, it was kind of the first time that I've ever been around other developers and gotten to see what their concerns are. And the primary concern for these other developers is, so I know I'm giving you a huge answer, but it's a complicated topic, the question that you're answering. Should I use libraries? So the answer is yes and no. It's a consideration. So there's two things. For starters, if you're working in a company and you have deadlines and you're pretty sure that you're not going to have time to learn a new library, without getting into arguments about maybe that person is in a position where they should have time to improve their skills, but I'm not going to get into that. Let's just assume you've got clients, you've got to make them happy. You want to build apps with a decent trade-off between quality and efficiency, which is different from what I do. I don't have any deadlines, so for me, it's all quality, which is a different approach. But let's keep this practical for a minute. Let's say you're an Android developer in a company, you've got deadlines. My suggestion, and I don't have a lot of experience with this, is, but okay, should I use Mockito? Let's do a direct example. Should you use Mockito? In that case, it's a case-by-case basis. Do you do test-driven development? If no, you don't need Mockito. Do you care about writing unit tests? If no, you don't need Mockito. It's really as simple as that. If you don't think you need it or you don't think you have time for it, whether that's actually true or not, because I feel like in some cases, as a developer, it's your responsibility to improve your own skill set, but whatever, it's a complicated topic. What I'm trying to say is that you don't always need libraries in that particular context. Now, when do you want to use libraries, which is kind of the second part of the question? And when should you learn a new library? I think that's also a really good question. So the first thing, when would you want to use Mockito? In my particular case, I have an application which I try and test fairly well. It needs a lot more tests, but I'm getting started at least with unit testing. Mockito is a great framework for unit testing. So in that case, it makes perfect sense to invest the week or two that it took me to get it. Well, Mockito wasn't that difficult to get running, but getting everything else to run with Mockito takes time. But Mockito itself is quite straightforward. But in that particular case, I'm pretty sure it's something that could actually help me do things faster or more efficiently, because I'm trying to do test-driven development. I'm trying to do unit tests. I feel like I'm playing an imaginary piano. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I feel like I've gone so far all over the place that this is crazy. Let me reread your question and just recenter things. Is it good practice to use libraries like Mockito, or is it good practice to use a library? Here's my general explanation. If you think a library is going to help you do something faster, or you want to learn a library because you're interested in it, or you just have to learn it, then absolutely. Great benefits can come from using libraries. Generally, here's the thing. There's often like a framework way to do something, and then there's like a third-party library way to do something. And as time progresses, it appears that in many cases it's better to go with I think that was the third-party solution. Yeah, it's better to go with the third-party solution. There's no easy answers for you. I'm so sorry. There's no easy answers here about when to use libraries, but let's take an example. Realm database. So I could invest the time to create a content provider, to create an SQLite open helper, to write out a schema or whatever for an SQLite database, and I could do all that so that I can set up a local SQLite database. Now, what happens if I'm maintaining a similar project on the web or on an Apple device? Well, in that case, for Apple, I don't actually know what they would do, but they would maybe have to do their own home-baked thing, or you would have to learn their own Apple's thing. Here's the thing. If I went with Realm, I'm learning to use Realm on Android. There's going to be direct carryover to web and mobile. So those are the kinds of things you need to think about, and that's why I can't give you a simple answer. Anyways, I think I'm going to move on. I'm happy with Realm and I'm learning how to use it, but I'm not necessarily saying go out and learn Realm. I'm not sold on it yet. I need to understand it better before I'm going to really ram it down people's throats, but it looks pretty cool so far. So that was a really, really long-winded answer, and hopefully it actually answered something, but I see I have some more questions. Oh, I see. So you meant the libraries were developed with PC resources in mind, but with no phone resources. To be honest, I'm still a bit confused, but hopefully I answered your question in general, and thank you for asking. We've got another question. What do you think is the best way to implement MVP when you have two fragments and one activity? So this is going to be another long one. This is a good question. Let me just note down the time. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting question. So the question again is, what do I think is the best way to implement Model View Presenter with two fragments and one activity? This is a really, really important question to me. And I'm going to hop into the code and talk about why. And what I'm going to do is the repository I'm going to be referencing to answer this question. I'm not actually going to be able to give you a final answer on this, but I'll share with you my thoughts. Okay, so this is POS Trainer. Again, it's open source. You can find it in my repos. Go looking for it. You'll find it. It's called POS Trainer. And every feature of the app So we've got like a reminder detail. Let me just actually run this app on the emulator and I'll just demonstrate it. I think it's relatively working. It's working fairly well at this point. Am I in full webcam? Nope. Okay. So just give me 1 minute. This is interesting. I think what I'll do is, I'm happy to answer a couple more questions, but this will probably be the last question that I answer unless I get another good one. But it's an interesting question. Okay, now before I continue, I really need to stress this. I'm not an expert. This is the question you asked is a problem I am still trying to answer myself, but hopefully I can give you some useful insight into it. So, for example, we've got this is Pos Trainer. I finally got it working with Dagger 2 and all this other crap. So I'm going to create a new alarm. Yeah, I know it's buggy. I need to fix that stuff. Whatever. This feature is within the application called Reminder List. I just wanted to show it to you really briefly. And then we also have this feature called, wow, that's really, oh, it's because it's on API 21, which is something I need to fix. But anyways, and then this feature here is called Reminder Detail. And there's a point, I'm not just demoing the app, there's a point to this. So that's all I'm going to show you. We've got two features. I'm just going to stop this emulator and we'll leave it be. And then I'm going to open up my package explorer and we'll just have a quick look here. Okay, so you notice, for example, that would have been reminder list. And when we check out reminder list or reminder detail, what do we have? We have an activity which contains a single fragment, a single presenter, and then it's got all of the Dagger 2 dependency injection, like the component and the presenter module and all that stuff. Let's not talk about that. Don't talk about the war. Yeah. So as you can see, and this is true of all of the different pieces of my application, all the different features, all the different activities, it's a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So what you're asking is, how do we deal with situations where there are two fragments within an activity and you also want to be following model view presenter? And there's different ways to do model view presenter, but just for anyone who's wondering, who's not familiar with it, generally speaking, either you're going to have your activity, which is the view in model view presenter. Let me hop into pontificating mode here. So in general, there's different ways to do model view presenter. There's different ideas of what model view presenter is. It's really complicated. I'll just share my experience. When you're doing MVP with an Android app, excuse me. When you're doing MVP, generally speaking, you're going to have an activity or a fragment or could just be an activity. I like to have the activity basically work as a container for the fragment and the presenter. So it's like a container. I don't consider it any part of the MVP, but other people do it differently. I'll just right off the bat, some people would consider the activity or use the activity like a view. I use it like a container as much as possible. It just initializes things. Then we've got the fragment, which for me, my fragments are the view. Cut and dry. That's the view in MVP. Then you've got a presenter, which is of course presenter. They're all called presenter. And then model, model means so many different things to different people. Like, I'm going to rant for a second here. I am most certainly not an expert in MVP, but it is something I'm pretty comfortable with. I've built like 3 applications in the past little while that use model view presenter architecture. I'm not an expert, but I'm also not a noob. I still don't know what model means. And it's not because I haven't read any explanations on it. I've read tons of explanations on what model means. No one agrees. Like, just this is a quick rant. I need to rant about this. This is some cathartic psychological venting here. So, um, did I just forget what I was just complaining about? Okay, so does model. Here's the thing, model could mean like a profile. To me, this, I hear all the time, okay, this is a model. I'm modeling some part of reality. I'm modeling a profile. A profile has bio interests, user ID, email, photo URL, blah, blah, blah. But then apparently model also means my service classes to a whole bunch of people. So to a whole bunch, to people that have read, all this would be considered as being in the category of model, like the database and all that kind of stuff. So longer story short, I'll stop complaining a huge amount about it and I'll get back to the question, but it just kind of frustrates me. One of the things that irritates me the most about learning Android or learning just coding in general is this stuff is complicated enough without everyone using different definitions and different explanations and all that stuff. Now, we don't live in a perfect world where everyone will use all the same definitions, and that's just a fact of life, but it sucks. Anyways, did I actually answer your question? I don't think I did, so I'm going to stop tangenting and try and answer your question a little bit better. How do we handle situations where we have two fragments to one activity in the context of a model view presenter style architecture? The shorter answer is I don't actually. I'm trying to think of how to answer this. You need to make. Let me answer it like this. The reason why I haven't started doing that myself is because it's sort of. What I would suggest you look up, check out the single responsibility principle. It's like a software architecture principle. I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way and basically say that I am personally not yet convinced that. I'm trying to think of how to say this artfully because I do need to say it artfully. Let me just answer it like this. I don't know how to do that yet. And the reason that I don't know how to do that yet is because I'm not actually convinced that it's a good idea yet. I'm not actually. Now, I know that's a weird thing to say because it's a common use case to have more than one fragment in an activity. It's just, what is the cost of doing that? Well, there's a couple things. So you'll notice that each one of my components or features in the application is generally responsible for one thing. So for example, I could have totally had like a feature called reminder. And within that feature called reminder, I could have had a detail fragment and I could have had a list fragment. And I could have swapped between those. Sorry, let me switch to code and then try that again. In PosTrainer, I could have had like this component here, reminder. I could, and reminder list and reminder detail. I could combine those into one thing and then do that approach. One activity, two fragments. Hopefully that makes sense. One activity, two fragments. I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? Why am I not doing that yet? Why am I actually a little bit convinced that that might not be the best thing to do? The way I have it set up now is each model view presenter is self-contained within its own activity, which basically functions as its own container. Due to Dagger 2 dependency injection, I've decoupled dependency management into other stuff. I know that's a little outside of the scope of your question, but it's relevant. and I try and keep all of my features doing one thing, single responsibility principle. Why would I do that, and why do I prefer that right now? I might change my mind. It keeps things simple. It keeps the complexity of each model view presenter, each feature of your app, lower. The moment you start doing multiple fragments or multiple presenters, which you might have to do, so here's the thing. If you want to do one activity, multiple fragments, you're probably going to have to do 2 presenters, or maybe you'll need to use event bus. Maybe you're going to need to add complexity to it. So that's the thing. Let me answer the question like this, and then I'll just shut up because I've been going all over the place. If you are convinced that the extra complexity that it would be necessary to add multiple fragments in one activity, if you've identified a use case where that is a better idea than just separating it into 2 individual things, 2 activities with a 1-to-1 ratio, if you're convinced that you need to do that, probably what you're going to need to do is have some kind of, maybe like a supervising presenter that watches the 2 presenters for each fragment, or you're going to need maybe event bus. I don't really know. Just know that you're going to need to add complexity. That's just a given. And the reason why you need to add the complexity is because you're doing 2 things in one feature. Now, maybe that's sometimes a better idea. Depends on the use case. Now, what I'm going to be doing over the next little while is I'm going to be trying to answer this question in detail, and I'm going to try and write a detailed blog post, because this is an important question. With my current approach, and this is the last little thing, with my current approach, it would be very difficult for me to handle. Not necessarily very difficult. It wouldn't be trivial to handle multiple fragments in one feature of the application. Until I'm convinced that that's a better idea, until I'm convinced that it might be better to do it that way in some cases, I'm going to stick with my single responsibility approach, and I'm going to keep things divided. So that was a super long, vague answer, and I hope that was useful to some people, because I don't even think I really answered your question properly. But anyways, hopefully me sharing my thoughts on that was useful to someone. Let's see if there's any... it looks like that's basically it. I'm just going to do one last call for questions. If you have anything else you'd like to ask me, now is the time. I'm either going to answer another question, or I'm going to cut it off in 2 minutes. But yeah, hopefully that gave you some food for thought. Let me talk, while I'm waiting for any more questions, I'm going to talk about something that's been on my radar. So the other day I was watching a video by Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob. I'm just going to make a note of this as well. This is clean and 1106. Okay, so some of you have heard of Uncle Bob or Robert C. Martin. He's an advocate of, I believe, agile development and clean architecture. What I've been trying to do lately is build a general purpose, flexible, clean architecture. Now, I just kind of got started sketching this out, and this sketch totally isn't complete, but I just wanted to share this with you guys because it's interesting. So I'm trying to I want the next app I build, or actually I might end up doing this with Profiler, I would like to rebuild it to use clean architecture. Now, I'm not going to try and explain what clean architecture is in one video, because experts can't really explain what it is in one video. You need to work with it. You need to build things with it to understand how it works, and that's just the case. But check this out. All right. So this isn't going to be super useful to a lot of people, but what this diagram is it's an incomplete diagram of a general purpose software architecture for Android development. You'll notice that there's some lines. So, for example, in this portion here is going to contain what are known as use cases. None of this is going to make sense to you. Yeah, I took a whole bunch of really awesome notes. Not awesome, but a whole bunch of notes from this presentation. Anyways, once this is complete, I'll share with you people again. This is going to be a diagram. The only thing you can kind of see is notice how we've got fragment, view, view model, and presenter. Also building an MM, that's actually MM is a code word for the architecture. And we've also got this dagger 2 thing. So basically what this diagram will eventually explain, hopefully if I do it properly, is in this portion, this module will contain fragments, views, activities, which I haven't included here, view models, presenters, all that will be here. And it'll talk to my use cases. This is clean architecture kind of stuff, and all that stuff that goes in here. And then there's going to be like I don't actually know what they call this in clean architecture, but I guess entities will go down here, I think. And then dagger 2 is going to be responsible for object creation across different layers of the application. So that's just kind of a sneak preview into what I am trying to do. I want to be able to make a general purpose, flexible software architecture that just works in many situations, has lots of use cases. It's going to take me a long time to do that, but if you're curious about that, then stay tuned, because that's my big goal for this year for the most part, is let's figure out a great software architecture, and I'm going to be sharing that openly for free with everyone. So hopefully if other people are interested in clean architecture and helping me with this project, then I will make more announcements in the future for ways that you can help me. All right, one last check on questions, and that's going to be it. Okay. So I've got a question from Miguel. He asks, do I use naming conventions on my tests? So let's hop into my test suites. So generally what I do, Miguel, is the first video I watched, the guy started every test was called when something happens. I think that's a good general rule, but you don't really... let me look at Pos Trainer, which is a more recent app. Let's look at one of these tests. I think I have a slightly different naming convention that I've adopted. Yeah, so for example, I'm generally going to prefix a test. I'll make the code bigger because I realize some people are watching on lower resolutions. So here's a sample unit test, and the question is, do I have any particular way that I go about naming this thing? I believe that's the question. Really, I have two suggestions. Just know that you're describing an action or a behavior, so you're saying when. This could probably say when. When is a good general purpose prefix. But on get reminders, so I'm saying on, and then I'm mentioning a method call. Now maybe I'm not writing explicitly what the method call is, but for example, let's open up reminder list presenter. I forgot to note this, note my tangent. Uh, 1111. Test naming convention. Sorry, I need to note down the times that I answer these questions now because I don't want to have to do it later. So, reminder list presenter, right? That's the one I need? Yes. So, again, I mentioned this earlier, but for example, this test here on get reminders not empty. So it's saying when or on, specific method call, and then it's saying what the kind of the result of that method call is. So for example, I'm going to say maybe I'll have one on get reminders not empty. So that means it's returning some kind of data. when it's on get reminders empty, and then on get reminders error. So you notice that there are three, I'm basically testing three cases of the same method. Why would I do that particularly? Let's go where I've got so many tabs open. I can't even fucking see which one I need. Suka, bliet. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you'll notice in my RxJava method callbacks, on success of get reminders returns a list of data. You'll notice in my test that this is that particular case. So when it returns a list of data, which I'm saying maybe.just, this is magical RxJava stuff for saying create this reminder list object with a reminder. So in that particular case, it's going to call on success, and then the test itself verifies that I've said set reminder list data with some list of data. If we look at the actual implementation, you'll notice that that is exactly what happens in that particular scenario. I kind of answered an extra question there, but yeah, hopefully that helps you. So naming conventions, I'll generally say like on or when. That doesn't really matter that much. I like to refer to a specific behavior or method that I'm testing right in the name. And then I like to suffix it by saying what I'm actually testing, what happens. So hopefully that answers your question. And I think there was one more. Nope, that's basically it. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, no worries, man. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a day here because I got a busy day ahead of me. But thanks for watching. I see we have a number of people watching, so just an important thing to note. If you jumped into this later on, you're probably seeing like a pretty random collection of topics. I am going to be doing more dedicated and streamlined content. This week, I'm A, job hunting, B, working on Pos Trainer and Profiler, C, doing social media, D, still working on my website, whatever. I'm doing a whole bunch of things, so for the time being, this is all the content I can give you. So please bear with me. It will be more streamlined. I'm putting effort on my side to give you guys time and girls timestamps and all that kind of stuff. So just bear with me. It's going to continue to be pretty unscripted here, but hopefully me sharing my thoughts is useful anyway. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I don't know when I'll be streaming next, but if you would like to get regular updates on when I stream, almost every stream I make, I'm either going to make a Twitter post or a Facebook post or a Google Plus post. So if you want to sort of get a heads up on when I'm streaming, I would suggest checking out that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and happy coding.